Hi everyone, I'm Heather from Cookbook Kitchenette, and on this channel I go through some of my vintage cookbooks from my vintage cookbook collection. I talk about the year it came from, what kind of food trends were around at that time, and then I cook one of the recipes from that cookbook. I want to say, starting out, I am in no means a historian. I'm just interested in food trends and what was going on at that time. So this week I have this cookbook. It's called the American Women's Cookbook, and it looks like it's from the Culinary Arts Institute. So my mom keeps telling me this looks like a Bible, which it is kind of like a cooking Bible, I guess, because there are so many recipes in here that come from the Culinary Arts Institute. So this cookbook, look how nice that is. This cookbook is from 1950. And through my research, I found that in 1950, one of the things that was popularized was the cabbage soup diet. So most people remember that from like the late 70s, early 80s. People were into this cabbage soup diet, but that was actually a reiteration of the original cabbage diet, which people actually called the Russian peasant diet as well. But it was basically you just eat cabbage and cabbage soup, which doesn't sound that nice of a diet, but I do like cabbage, but I like it in a different, a whole variety of ways. So, and not just cabbage. I like to eat a lot of different things. So, that being said, because the cabbage soup diet, or the cabbage diet, was popularized in 1950, I thought it made sense to make a cabbage recipe. So, because I don't go for diet culture or diet fads, I'm going to make a recipe that I found in here that is scalloped cabbage with cheese. So it's like a scalloped potato recipe, but with cabbage, and it sounds very good to me. So it's just cabbage, cheese, white sauce, and breadcrumbs. So if you want to follow along with me, scalloped cabbage with cheese, I'm going to make that following up. So follow along. I'm going to go wash my hands, get ready to cook, and cook along with me. So here's the recipe that I'm going to use here. It is the scalloped cabbage with cheese. The white sauce recipe is in a completely different spot in the cookbook, but what are you going to do? I think because it's more like a school book for the Culinary Arts Institute, that's why they've done that. So I'm going to start out with cutting up a small cabbage. Just one cabbage, and I cut it up into pieces, and then I boiled that in salt water until it was soft. This is actually only half a cabbage because my pot, the larger pot, wouldn't work with the induction burner, so I've gone with two different cooks of this cabbage, so I started with just half. I preheated my oven to 350. So once all the cabbage was done and tender, I took that off the heat and I drained it and set it aside. So for this recipe, it called for a medium white sauce. So I started with 2 tablespoons of butter and I melted that in the pot. And then after that's completely melted, you add 2 tablespoons of flour, and then you add 1 cup of milk slowly, and you put pepper in that, and then you let it just simmer on low while you stir it, and it will eventually thicken into the medium white sauce that you need. In this cookbook, there's also a recipe for a thin white sauce and a thick white sauce, so that's kind of cool that they have different uses for each of them. So that's pretty much coming to complete thickness that we need for this recipe, which I think is a medium thickness. So once that's completely done, I set that aside, but I stirred it pretty regularly so it didn't harden or get any tougher. And then I just removed it from the heat and let it sit. From there, I took my Pyrex baking dish. It called for a greased dish, so I just sprayed it with some canola oil that I had. And then from there, you layer. So you start with the cooked cabbage in a thin layer. Next step was shredded cheese. So it just called for shredded cheese. I went with a white cheese, so it all kind of matched, but I went with a Monterey Jack. I feel like this would be very good with like a shredded Gruyere cheese, but Monterey Jack was just what I had on hand. And then you top it with a white sauce. And then you continue with the layers until all your cabbage, your cheese, and your white sauce is gone, and you end with a white sauce layer. So while my oven was preheating, I just set a container of butter on it to melt. So once that butter was completely melted, I added some breadcrumbs to this. So the breadcrumbs mix in with the butter, and then it becomes like a crumbly mixture, and then you add that to the top of your scalloped cabbage to add like a nice little crust to it and some good flavor. So from there, I just set this into my oven and I set it for about 20 minutes, but you just bake it until the crumbs on top are brown and you can see it bubbling. Okay, so there we have it. I've scooped myself some of the cabbage, scalloped cabbage onto here. And that's from the American Woman's Cookbook. Smells excellent. So let's dig in. Looks awesome. It smells great. That definitely beats like the diet cabbage that they ate, where they just boiled it down with water. It's buttery, it's creamy, you still taste the cabbage, which I'm a cabbage fan, so I love this. Very good. In the white sauce too, you could also add a little bit of mustard to add some extra flavor. And I've done it with the white sauce with a tiny bit of mustard and a tiny bit of lemon pepper, and it's turned out really good. So I would try that with this. And I would put some like dried herbs in with the breadcrumbs as well and crumble that on top. I think that would be delicious. But otherwise, it's a really good like basic recipe that you can add to and make it your own. Thank you for following along. If you like this recipe, be sure to like it, comment. You know, I'm always interested in hearing what you'd like to hear, what you'd like to see next in terms of recipes, and just hear a little bit more about you, because I'm here to build community and meet other people who love vintage cookbooks and cooking. So please comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.